Welcome to session 2 of our study of Paul's letter to the Philippians. In this letter, Paul writes his heartfelt concern. It's a passionate letter from prison. Paul is lonely, he's isolated, he's confined. He wants to see his beloved face to face, but he can't. And so he writes in words. He puts into the letter what he would say to them face to face if he could. In that opening chapter, he communicates his deep love, that Philippians are loved by him, they're partners in ministry, they are his crown and his glory. In the first chapter, he shares his affection for the Philippians. He shares his prayer for them. And then as he moves towards the second part of that opening chapter, he seeks as a father to ease their concern. They're worried about Paul's future. They're worried about what might happen to Paul. And Paul seeks to ease their concern, to let them know that even though he's in prison, God is at work. This is what he writes. He says, I want you to know that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. It has become clear throughout the whole palace guard that I am in chains for Christ. For Paul, the positive side of his imprisonment, of his confinement, was that in the midst of his suffering, Jesus is proclaimed. Somehow Paul was able to find good in the midst of the most difficult times. Later in this letter, he'll write to the Philippians and urge them to do what he did. To think about whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure. From his prison cell, Paul saw God at work. He saw God, and he seeks the good. He seeks God in the midst of life. How about us? Are we positive people? Do we see God at work in the most difficult, trying times? Do we see the good, or are we a negative person? We have a choice. We can choose to be positive, or we can choose to be negative. We can choose to be like Paul and look for God at work. Paul sought to look for the good, but he was also a realist. He knew what the future might hold. And so he goes on to write, he says, I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage so that now and always Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. This week, be a positive person. Look for the good. But also be a realist. Know what lies ahead. Seek to find the good. Read over these verses in Philippians 12 to 26 several times. Pick out that verse or word or phrase that really captures you and focus on that. And remember, we were faithful yesterday, we are faithful today, and we will be faithful forever. So have a great week. Trust God, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.